Welcome to Rewatch or Return, the podcast where we put movies through the ultimate test across 10 universal categories to decide, does it call for a definite rewatch, a definite trip to the return bin, or does our subjectivity cause it to fall somewhere in between? This week, things are going to be a little bit different. This will be, as this comes out, this will be the Monday following the opening weekend of the new Fantastic Four film. And so, I've decided that this is going to be kind of a double take episode, and we're going to look at Fantastic Four 2005 and Fantastic Four 2015. We will not be looking at the 90s to Fantastic Four. I'm sorry, maybe some other time, but that's not going to be one we cover here. But Fantastic Four 2005, Fantastic Four 2015, and funny enough, this one is Fantastic Four, the new one, 2025. So over 30 years, we get one every 10 years or 20 years. Yeah. So, with that said, let's jump right into Fast Forward Facts. Marvel's first family has had a rough ride on the big screen. Two major adaptations a decade apart, both packed with potential, and both ultimately failing to stick the landing. So let's fast forward through two films, two dooms, and a whole lot of studio confusion. First up, Fantastic Four 2005. Released by 20th Century Fox and directed by Tim Story, this version came at a time when superhero movies were still testing the waters, pre-MCU, pre-Dark Knight, and just a year after Spider-Man 2. It starred Ioan Gruffudd as Reed Richards, Jessica Alba as Sue Storm, Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm, and a then up-and-coming Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. This cast gave the movie a kind of Saturday morning energy, especially Evans, who brought the literal and figurative fire to the screen. The film follows the origin fairly closely. A cosmic radiation storm gives the team their powers, and the menacing Victor Von Doom, played by Gillian McMahon, gets his own electrical villain arc. The tone, a pure 2000s comic book movie. Bright colors, cheesy one-liners, questionable CGI, and a very PG-level take on a superhero action. It made over $330 million at the box office, which was enough to justify Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer in 2007. But then came the reboot. Fantastic Four 2015, or as some call it, Fant Four-Stick, directed by Josh Trank, who had just wowed audiences with Chronicle just a few years earlier. This film aimed to be the gritty, grounded reinvention of the franchise. The cast included rising stars Miles Teller as Reed, Kate Mara as Sue, Jamie Bell as Ben, and Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, which was a casting decision that sparked early internet controversy, though Jordan's performance really didn't have anything to do with it. The real issue was everything else. Studio interference plagued the production, entire chunks of the movie were reshot, scenes from the trailer were missing from the final cut, and the third act was so rushed it felt like the team forgot they were making a superhero movie. Trank publicly disowned the film just before release, tweeting that he once had a, quote, fantastic version of the film that audiences would never get to see. And he wasn't wrong. According to reports, the original version included body horror elements and character-driven pacing, but Fox panicked halfway through production and forced a late-stage rewrite. The result? A disjointed story, awkward character arcs, and a box office bomb. The film made just $167 million worldwide, less than half the gross of the 2005 film, and scored a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not just bad, that's infamous. Still, with the MCU's new Fantastic Four arriving under the Marvel Studios banner, it's worth taking a look back at what we've gotten the past quarter century in order to know just how far the first family has come to enter the modern era, the one of the cinematic universe. All right, with that down, let's move on to what the critics said. Instead of doing the normal 10 per, I'm going to go 5 for one and 5 for another. So this is where we take the top 10 critic reviews from Rotten Tomatoes, but instead, because we're doing two films here, I'm going top 5 for one film, top 5 for the other. The 2005 is what we'll start with. It has, on Rotten Tomatoes, a 27% on Tomato Meter, and a 45% on the popcorn meter. So neither of those are looking real great on either of your ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's look at what the critics said here about Fantastic Four 2005. Marvel Comics continues to empty out its stable of superheroes with this entertaining tale, says J.R. Jones of the Chicago Reader. Mark Salisbury from Time Out says, Fantastic, it most certainly ain't. Keith Phillips from AV Club says a garish mediocrity. Nell Minnow from Movie Mom says the Fantastic Four are unpretentious and nerdy, and they bicker with each other, giving the film a loose, buoyant quality in between action sequences. And then Ollie Richards from Empire Magazine says a fantastic bore. Now, for Fantastic Four 2015, the top 5 say Christy Puchko from CBR says, quote, Fantastic Four is a profound mess. It's not fun, it's not exciting, it's far from action-packed, and it most certainly is not fantastic. Jason Bailey from Flavor Wire says, a poorly constructed, ineptly executed, flat-footed piece of branded product that plays as though it were written by a piece of software fed every superhero movie script to date and instructed to synthesize them. I almost got tongue-tied there. Richard Roper from Chicago Sun-Times says, a lightweight and basically unnecessary attempt to once again bring some cinematic life to one of the lesser teams in the Marvel Universe. Mark Savlov from Austin Chronicle says, the newest iteration of Stan Lee and Jolton Jack Kirby's classic superheroes plays like some misguided cross between an 80s afternoon school special and a failed Warner Brothers teen heartthrob outing, sans the emotional depth. Katie Walsh from Tribune News Service says, the latest iteration of Fantastic Four is far from what its name suggests. Profoundly uninteresting, it hits all the beats of the standard superhero movie, but providing nothing in the way of imagination or magic. So, for the top 5 of your 2005 film, you have 2 positive and 3 negative, and you have 5 negative from your top 5 of your 2015 film. Not so great from the critics, and even not so great from your regular audience from the popcorn meter. With that down, let's move on to First Time or 50th. Now, the first film, let's talk Fantastic Four 2005. I remember this coming out, and this was in the era of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films, so there was that comic kind of, oh, you can do comic movies and it works, or at least it can be popular. And so this was 20th Century Fox's take on what Sony was doing with Spider-Man and trying to go reach into that very comic book feel, heavy on just straight in your face, this is a comic book movie, and see if they could do it too with the Fantastic Four. I believe, I'm honestly not sure if X-Men had been out yet. This may have been pre-X-Men. I'm not sure what year X-Men came out. Surely, no, it had to have come out before, yeah. So X-Men would have been a 20th Century Fox property already. Then, like I said, you had Sony's Spider-Man. So at the time that this came out, it was somewhat, I'm not saying that people raved over it, but it was at least popular because it was a popular time for this kind of movie. I remember it coming out, being a junior in high school, and at least enjoying the movie for what it was. This is I don't know how many times I've seen this, but I've seen bits and pieces of it several times throughout the years. I've watched it in its entirety a handful of probably 5, 6, maybe even 10 times. I have a little bit of a nostalgia for that time, for when these movies were coming out and when they were trying to do this new comic book thing that was not treated as a big goofy joke, but in some way trying to do it in not a grounded manner necessarily, but in some, like, taking itself seriously. So that definitely did influence the way that I watched this particular film, because I remember when it came out. I remember how I felt watching it the first time and all that. With that being said, the new one, not new, but the 2015 one, I watched one time, I think, when it came out, and I'm not even sure that I actually finished it. And if I did finish it, it was so not memorable that I don't remember whether I finished it or not. So this time I watched it again for this particular episode, and I remembered very little of it. So this was my second watch, and I watched it thinking, I don't remember that, I don't remember that, I don't remember that. I just remember these people are the people that played those characters, their faces anyway. So, yeah, this is, I don't know, not something I have any nostalgic ties to as far as the 2015 version, and watching it again, felt the same way I did the first time I watched it. But for first time or 50th, yeah, I've probably seen the first one 20 or 15 times max, and that's if you count like watching it all the way through and watching bits and pieces of it here and there. And I've seen this new one twice. So and that was, like I said, one before I even started this, right before this episode. With that all down, let's move on to be continued. Would a sequel work for this film? And if there is a sequel, should there have been? Now, for the 2015 or the 2005 version, I'm going to get myself way mixed up here. For the 2005 version, there is a sequel. It's called Rise of the Silver Surfer. It was not a great movie. I am much more fond of this 2005 first outing of this crew than I am of the second one. I don't think they should have really done anything because of what they ended up doing with that one. It was real odd. The Galactus was like some sort of big imposing cloud, not really like Galactus from the comics, unless there was a Galactus cloud that I'm unaware of, and that's could be the case. But anyway, it felt like they did things a little bit different. I definitely don't think there should be a sequel to the 2015 version because it was terrible, and there's no way in the world they would have wasted money doing anything else with that. So, to be continued, I think both of these should have just been left alone. Thankfully, the second one was. The first one probably should have been left alone as well. I don't think they really knew what they wanted to do with it, and that's my opinion about whether or not there should have been sequels at all to these. Before we jump into the final segment, today's episode is brought to you by PrepStartsNow.com, your go-to spot for emergency and outdoor preparedness. If you're anything like me, you'd rather be prepared and not need it than need the essentials and not have them. From 72-hour emergency essentials to camping gear, car emergency essentials, multi-tools, first aid, and even home gardening supplies as you start your own garden. They've got you covered for all of it, and the best part is, as a listener, you can use the promo code REWATCH to get a 15% site-wide discount, and you'll also be helping out the show as they give us a reward for your business in the process. Head to PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch. That's PrepStartsNow.com/discount/rewatch, or simply enter the code REWATCH at checkout and get prepared today. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to do necessarily a recap on either of these. We'll kind of get into a little bit of the recap-ish stuff when we get into all the final verdict categories. But with that said, let's move into the final verdict. Looking at, for those of you who aren't familiar, the final verdict is where we put the film to the test across 10 categories, scored on a scale from 1 to 5. And that scale looks like this. 1 is poor, 2 is weak, 3 is fair, 4 is good, and 5 is excellent. We add those up at the end, and if the score falls anywhere between 10 and 20, it's a return. Anywhere between 20 and 30, it's return worthy, but leaning maybe towards the middle somewhere. If it's between 30 and 40, it leans rewatch. If it's between 40 and 50, it is a certified rewatchable movie. Now, granted, this is all subjective. Just because something lands a certain way for me, and I tell you this is where my score lands, whether it's rewatchable or leans rewatch or return worthy or simply a straight return, that doesn't mean that that's how you have to feel. This is just my subjective score, and that's what makes this fun. Moving into the first category, story and plot. Is the narrative compelling and coherent? Does it still hold up on a rewatch? Now, the story and plot for the 2005 version of I think they at least made a compelling, coherent story. So there was nothing in it that I felt was wishy-washy, or kind of not sure where they're going, or it just seems like, what are you doing here? Why is this involved, and why is this part of the story, or why am I watching this scene? There was none of that. It pretty well went along, and you understood, like, this is leading to this, is leading to this, is leading to this, is leading to this, and there's a purpose for all of it, and it kind of upped the stakes, and it felt like, hey, a comic story in a comic book movie, and it all made sense for what they were doing to me. So I scored the original film, 2005, a 4 out of 5, meaning that I think that it was good, solid, the story and plot, that is. Now let's talk the story and plot for the 2015 version and the score for that. I think that this was pretty bad. There was so much that made zero sense to me. For example, the opening scene of the film establishing, hey, this is a smart kid, and making sure that Reed and Ben, you establish their friendship in some way, but none of it was necessary. So everything that was established in the first maybe 5 or 6 minutes of the movie as their children was completely unnecessary, because right after that you went into a scene that would have 100% established all of what you were establishing in the first 5 minutes. They're friends. Reed is very smart. Ben helps him with things. And Reed has created this machine that displaces and allows things to travel through space, transport, teleport, whatever. So the whole entire beginning of the movie, the first scene as their children, made no sense to put that in there, because you reestablished all that again. So that was completely and totally pointless. Pretty much everything about this movie was pointless to me. It just felt like, to be honest with you, these are very fantastical characters, right? These are characters who have fantastic abilities because of this event that happened. And some things you can, for example, I think you could put Superman in a very grounded world and just understand that he's an alien from another planet, and he has these powers simply because of the radiation from our sun, and it does these things because he is an alien, right? But if you start bringing other characters from the Superman world into that grounded space, and you do not properly ground them, it's going to feel weird and out of place. That's how this whole entire movie felt. Everything felt weird and out of place because they tried to ground it too much. They tried to make this sort of dark and gritty and grounded version of these fantastical characters. So you're trying to put me in a normal world where there's none of it makes sense. I can't make it make sense. And watching this movie, it bored me, because I'm like, you have not put me in a place, right, with the tone of this and everything. You've not put me in a place to even buy anything that you're doing, because I'm supposed to take this as like somewhat reality, and none of the things that are in the film fit with reality. So the whole entire story and plot falls apart because it's just nonsensical in this world, and it doesn't feel like anything's really tied together. It feels very disjointed, and so many things feel out of place. It feels like they don't really develop anything truly. There's just no real character development. The story just kind of, the beats are just off. It just feels really off. And so for story and plot for the 2015 version of this, I give it a 2.5 out of 5. So for me, it falls between weak and fair. Maybe I'm being a little nice there. Now, moving on to characters and performances. Are the characters memorable and well acted, or forgettable and flat? For the 2005 Fantastic Four, I think that the characters are very memorable and well acted for the roles that they were asked to play. And I don't think they are really forgettable. I don't think they're flat. I think that these guys understood the assignment, right? So Michael Chiklis, Chris Evans, Jessica Alba, and I never can pronounce this guy's name right, but I think it's like Ioan Gruffudd, even though it's spelled completely different than that. But they all understood the assignment. Now, I'm not saying that they were all really well written necessarily, or they were given a lot of space to really flesh out these characters completely, at least all four of them. But Michael Chiklis does great as Ben. Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, like, definitely there's a kind of a love for him just in the fandom as that character, because he does such a great job with it. Jessica Alba her as Sue is just kind of, she just kind of is, it's not great, but it's not bad. And then like I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, but Ioan plays Reed as a kind of a normal Reed guy. He's not super duper interesting necessarily, but at the same time, the fact that he's not interesting is in some ways what makes him interesting, weirdly enough. But I gave the characters and performances for the 2005 version a 4 out of 5, because I do think that they all understood the assignment. They are memorable in the roles that they played. Like, very, at least for me, like, it's all in my mind. I see those guys as those guys, okay? And now that's not the case. So like I said, 4 out of 5 for that. Now, it's not the case with the 2015 version. I didn't feel like any of those characters were those characters, you know what I mean? Had they not made, it's like, again, like I said, it just felt like these were people playing people, but none of them felt, even particularly Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm, just kind of felt, it's almost irritating to talk about it, to be honest, because it just felt like everything about not that any of these guys are bad actors, but it was just all terribly written. And because of that, all of it fell flat because they didn't have anything to work with. You know what I mean? So this was just like, there was nothing that stood out about anything or anybody. It was all completely forgettable and flat to me. So I give them, because I'm being nice to the actors themselves, who I typically like all of them, I'm giving them a 2.8 out of 5. So, like I said, we're almost to fair, but we're still in weak territory. Moving along to pacing and entertainment value. Were you entertained the whole time? Did the movie keep your attention? Does it feel too slow, too rushed, or just right? Now, for the 2005 version of this, the pacing and entertainment value, I thought, was in the fair to good area. It is not anything spectacular, but it does move along pretty well. It's definitely not too fast, but it doesn't drag. The movie is entertaining. There's some entertaining beats and some entertaining parts and some comedy and some some stuff that makes it an entertaining film. Now, is it the most entertaining film? Is it something that you're going to claim is one of the best things you've ever seen? No. But if you occasionally sit down and watch it, it's something that I could regularly be entertained by. It's not going to hurt my feelings if it's on TV. I'd probably stop and watch it. Now, for the 2015 version, I felt like it was very weak. I was bored to death watching this for the second time. I think I might have turned it off the first time I watched it back when it came out, to be honest. I do remember getting it. I remember I can very vividly remember having it on at my house, and I remember absolutely nothing else about it other than I put it on. And like I said, I think I turned it off. I was bored to death in the middle of this, or not even up into the middle, but a little bit into this. I was kind of like, I would really just like to turn this off, but I have to watch it because I'm doing this. So I didn't care for it from an entertaining perspective. The pacing, like I said, it just felt all over the place, and there was some really boring, down, dull moments where, particularly, it felt like they hung too long on things that they shouldn't have hung too long on. Like, you didn't even really see their abilities that they were going to get until like an hour into this thing, and even then, it was like, for the most part, you get the tail end of the movie, you get like a glimpse of their fantastic abilities, and then it's over. It never really feels like they become the Fantastic Four. There's so much of this that just feels like a movie made about people that can do weird stuff, rather than a movie that is supposed to be a Fantastic Four movie. So I gave this a 2 out of 5 for pacing and entertainment value. Dialogue and quotability. Are there iconic or memorable lines? Do people still quote it? Does the dialogue feel natural or cringy? For the 2005 version, there's a ton of quotable stuff in that movie for me. There's a lot of Chris Evans stuff that's hilarious to me, where he is what does he say? He takes a pic. I can't remember exactly the order of it. You remember the time when there was those commercials and it was like, this cost this much, this thing cost this much, this thing cost this much, and then, but this is priceless. And he does one of those deals. It's not necessarily a quotable moment, but it's a very memorable moment. And what he says is something along the lines of, a camera, digital camera costs this much, memory card costs this much, but your former commanding officer having to call you captain or something like that, it's priceless. The way that he delivers that is pretty funny. Then there's the lines where he's talking after they've been hit with the radioactive cloud or whatever, and they're back kind of under quarantine, and Chris Evans is talking to the nurse as Johnny Storm, and she puts the thing in his mouth and the thermometer, and she's like, "Oh, you're hot," and he's like, "Well, thank you. You're pretty great yourself," or you're I don't remember what he said, but I do remember him going, "Why, thank you," and thinking that it was like she was complimenting him rather than talking about his thermometer temperature. And then they are skiing, and she looks over at him, and he's like, his clothes have caught fire because he's the Human Torch, and all this stuff is starting to happen and develop with his new physical ability or change or whatever. And she looks over as they're skiing, and he's on fire, and she goes, "You're on fire," and he goes, "Thanks, you're pretty good too." I love that. I just love everything about the way that he plays Johnny Storm in this movie, and the many moments that he has something quippy or funny to say. I feel like alone, so the dialogue and quotability for this movie, it feels very true to the comics, and that they were trying to lean into the way that they spoke and things. They were trying to lean into the comics, especially with the whole bickering back and forth between Ben and Johnny, it's clobbering time little action figure that he there's leaning into all those actual Fantastic Four stuff. But I gave the dialogue and quotability for this film a 4 out of 5 because I think that, like I said, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. I think when there was even though it was a comic book movie and it was set to be very comic book, the serious moments were still they were done really well. the lines didn't feel cheesy or silly. It felt much better than its 2015 version that would follow. But I gave the 2005 version for dialogue and quotability a 4 out of 5. And then the 2015 version, I don't remember a single thing about any of the dialogue or any of it, other than I remember being irritated about Victor and how that character was treated in the film. So for dialogue and quotability for the 2015 version, I gave it a 2 out of 5, meaning I thought it was weak, flawed, and very inconsistent. Moving along to soundtrack and score. Now, the way that we judge that, does the music enhance the film or date it? Does it elevate the emotional tone of the film or feel out of place? Is it iconic or generic? I think it's just kind of fair for the 2005 version. It's not bad. It's not really memorable. Like, I couldn't hum it to you right now. But at the same time, I do remember it being very orchestral or brassy, a lot of trumpets and like all that kind of stuff. I at least remember that much of it. So I put it as a 3 out of 5. It's fair. It's adequate. It does the job, but it doesn't really do any heavy lifting. The 2015 version, soundtrack and score, I don't remember anything about it. Thinking back, it just was very generic, and it felt like it could have been for anything. It didn't feel, like I said, there's nothing about it that stuck out. It just felt like a score that was put together for a movie because it had to have some music. And because of that, I gave it a 2 out of 5. Moving along to cinematography and visual style. Is it visually engaging or stylish, regardless of effects, budget, or genre? Do the camera work and effects impress, or do they look clunky or even dated in some cases? The 2005 version of this, I think, now it wasn't, there's some moments that don't hold up or that are a little they're a little of their time, of that period when this was made. Some of the, especially the stretchy effects for Mr. Fantastic, and I think the fire effects were pretty solid. But then even there was a lot of practical stuff in that film, which I can appreciate them doing as much practical type stuff as they could for this. But even some of the practical stuff felt obviously as an effect. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I can see that this is a real thing, but it is so obviously an effect, or obviously you have built this to look this way. It just, some of it felt like a movie set rather than a movie itself. And so where it wasn't bad, it wasn't necessarily great. I think the look of things was fine. I think they did a good job of, like, it leaned heavy into that same kind of Sam Raimi-esque Spider-Man comic vibes of being very bright and the same. It had a lot of the same feel and vibes of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, in my opinion. But I gave the 2005 version a 3.9 out of 5. Just a hair under good in that, heavy up at the top of fair, but not quite at the good point. The 2015 version, cinematography and visual style, I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 because at the time that it was made, there's nothing, like, it's just very dark and blah. There's nothing real great about any of the shots. It's just very generic in that aspect, and the effects in many cases should have been much better for the time in which this came out, 2015. And we're talking they should, if you've gone and seen, here's what bugs me. If you go back and watch Transformers, that came out in 2008, maybe, the original Transformers movie, or even Transformers, the second one, Revenge of the Fallen, there is a scene where these little bitty nanobot or micro robot thingies come together to create this like other larger robot thing that gets up and walks. It is so well done. It looks like it is a real thing happening. And the fact that these movies, like something like this in 2015, there's like everything about when they go and experience all the stuff that causes their issues or their abilities, like it's all just really badly done. And I'm not saying that they didn't have the it's not to knock anybody. Sometimes they just don't have the time to finish that stuff. But I'm not judging the ability of a special effects artist here. I'm judging what the movie looks like. And I did, for cinematography and visual style, I give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's weak to fair, not completely weak. It ain't quite fair. So it's getting a 2.5 out of 5. Theme and message. Is there a deeper takeaway, and does it explore ideas that resonate today? For the 2005 version, if there's a theme or bigger takeaway, I think it would be that to not to lean into those around you when you're going through something, and not try to do it, not try to go through something alone or do something alone. That generally you're stronger together and you're better together, and it's easier to get through things when you do it with others rather than trying to go at it on your own. And if there's a message, I think it's that, where those guys in the 2005 version, it did feel very much like they were a group and they were trying to do this together. Even though they had their issues, it felt like they were all kind of in it together. And the 2015 version, on the other hand, felt like there was nothing. I don't know that there was any message whatsoever. I don't know what it could be really like. I could probably pull something out of it, and don't be a villain. Don't want to take over the world or create. I don't know. Like I said, you could go like, hey, the message is don't do the thing that the bad guy did, whatever. But I don't like I said, I gave this a 2 out of 5, the 2015 version, because it is very weak, very, very, very weak when it comes to any kind of messaging or takeaway from the film itself. Now, cringe factor, moving along to that, are there any jokes, effects, or moments that haven't aged well or were always bad? Moments that make you wince now, which are campy, cheesy, bad effects, outdated jokes that aren't funny, etc. For the 2005 version, I gave this a 3 out of 5. It's in that fair area. It's not super duper cheesy, but it's not cheesy. So it like rides that middle line of like, hey, we're a comic book movie. We kind of sort of take ourselves seriously, but there's a lot of that kind of early 2000s comic book cheese. And there is a lot of the cheesy, campy, bringing, it's clobbering time. And some of the, like, even though they're kind of funny and some things are funny about some of the lines in the movie, there are some cheesy lines delivered. So that one gets a 3 out of 5 for me. It's kind of right there in the middle of the cheese or the cringe factor for my cheesy perspective. And the 2015 version kind of fell in the same area. It was cringy for different reasons. It was cringy because some of the effects are worse than they should be. There's just really like some moments in the film that are Well, for this reason alone, I would make this feel. I would put this at 3 out of 5. You don't hear a single thing about Fantastic Four until the end of the movie. You don't really like. There is nothing about them as a team. The only thing it's like the whole entire movie is not about the Fantastic Four, which is super cringe to me. And even at the end, they're trying to come up with a name for the group, and Ben ends up saying, they all spit out their names, and Ben ends up saying something about, well, either way, we're pretty fantastic. And then Reed says, that's it. And Ben says, like, what? Or something like that. And then it goes, boom, and then shows, like, the name Fantastic Four. And that's the end of the movie. So it feels like an origin story that's really not an origin story, that never fully even gets to the point where they are the Fantastic Four. You see them work together for just a minute, but even then, they don't really work together completely. It's cringe in that it's trying to be a Fantastic Four movie, and it is not really, which is cringy to me. It's a cringe take on the film, on the IP. So I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. Whatever. I'll say fair. Nostalgia and rewatchability. Does it hold up to your memory of it? Does it still matter today? Is it timeless? Has it aged poorly? Does a rewatch ruin the magic? And would you honestly watch it again? For the 2005 version, I do have a little bit of nostalgia for this. Does it hold up to your memory of it? Yeah. I mean, my memory of it was kind of what it is. Like, I never held it up in really high regard, but I also always kind of enjoyed the film a little bit. It was like a guilty pleasure kind of thing. Does it still matter today? No, I don't think there's any. I mean, maybe it may matter in that it was part of a time that led to other things being able to happen. But other than that, no. Is it timeless? No, I wouldn't put it as at timeless. Has it aged poorly? It's aged okay. It's one of those deals where when you watch it for what it is, it's totally fine. Like, it's not really, really bad. The effects aren't really, really bad. Nothing's really aged really, really bad. It's just kind of like they made a movie that fit the time and the kind of comic book movies that they were making at the time. But I don't think it's aged poorly necessarily. Does a rewatch ruin the magic? No. I've enjoyed it again like I have enjoyed it before for what it is. And would you honestly watch it again? I'll watch it again, I'm sure. I'll come back around to this and watch it, in the future a handful of times. So because of that, I gave this, for nostalgia and rewatchability, a 3 out of 5. Now, the 2015 version, on the other hand, does it hold up to your memory of it? I barely remember any of it at all from when I watched it, 10 years ago. Does it still matter today? Absolutely not, unless it mattering in the way that it shows you what you don't want to do. Is it timeless? Not at all. Has it aged poorly? Maybe. I think it's less appealing now than it was even 10 years ago, for sure. And it wasn't appealing then. Does a rewatch ruin the magic? Yeah, there was no magic, but a rewatch made me dislike it even more. Would you honestly watch it again? I wouldn't watch this again unless for some reason I was in a situation where I didn't have any control over what was playing. If I had control over what was playing, I'd turn this thing off. So I gave this a 1 out of 5 in that it was poor, like actively bad, for nostalgia and rewatchability. All that down, let's go through and see what the actual final verdict is for each of these. So let's go straight down the row for the 2005 version of Fantastic Four. Story and plot, I gave, again, these are my scores, they're not yours, they don't have to be yours, just accept that this is how I feel about these. Story and plot, a 4 out of 5. Characters and performances, 4 out of 5. Pacing and entertainment value, 3.8 out of 5. Dialogue and quotability, 4 out of 5. Soundtrack and score, 3 out of 5. Cinematography and visual style, 3.9 out of 5. Originality and creativity, 2.9 out of 5. I think I missed that category. time out. Let's hit originality and creativity really fast. Does the film feel fresh and inspired, or like something you've seen 100 times? Was the film groundbreaking or formulaic? Does it bring something unique? Okay, so the 2005 version of Fantastic Four, does the film feel fresh and inspired? Not really. It kind of feels like the same thing that everybody was sort of doing at the time. Was the film groundbreaking? No. Or formulaic? Kind of sort of formulaic. Does it bring something unique? I don't know that it brings really anything unique at all. I gave it a 2.9 out of 5. And for the 2015 version, again, it's very blah. I'm not going to really get into it because I don't think it was original in any way, other than they were trying to do something that was dumb with this. Maybe they were trying to be different. But it was a dumb decision. And it was definitely not trying to be unique. It was trying to do what everybody else was doing at the time also, which was like make this grounded thing. Make this dark and gritty and grounded comic book thing. So I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Now that I've covered that, moving right along to 2005 version, got a 3 out of 5 on theme and message, got a 3 out of 5 on cringe factor, and got a 3 out of 5 on nostalgia and rewatchability. So the 2005 version falls into the 39.6 out of 50 score, meaning that this is the first film in the series of this podcast so far that falls below certified rewatchable. I told you one would eventually, and here it is. Fantastic Four 2005 falls at a 39.6 out of 50, meaning that it is in the leans rewatch but debatable category. It is not certified rewatchable. It leans rewatch but debatable, and that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, it's a movie where I'm gonna probably rewatch this some, but it's debatable on whether or not like it's worth rewatching. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little guilty pleasure-ish kind of thing. But yeah, first one that falls below certified rewatchable, Fantastic Four 2005, 39.6 out of 50 on the verdict scale. Now, going down the row for the 2015 version of Fantastic Four, story and plot 2.5 out of 5, characters and performances 2.8 out of 5, pacing and entertainment value 2 out of 5, dialogue and quotability 2 out of 5, soundtrack and score 2 out of 5, cinematography and visual style 2.5 out of 5, originality and creativity 2.5 out of 5, theme and message 2 out of 5, cringe factor 3 out of 5, nostalgia and rewatchability, it gets a 1 out of 5. This one falls at 22.3 out of 50. So your 2015 version of Fantastic Four falls at 22 out of 50, making it, or 22.3 out of 50, making it return worthy unless you're feeling nostalgic, is what this, I don't know how anybody would feel nostalgic about this, but if you're feeling nostalgic about Fantastic Four, I suppose, and you're like, I love the Fantastic Four, and so, like, basically I know this movie sucks really bad, but I'm gonna watch it because I like Fantastic Four. I can see that. I have movies like that. I won't tell you what they are yet. Maybe we'll get into that later. But I have movies like that where I'm like, I know this is kind of sort of pretty bad, but I still like watching it for whatever reason. I'll tell you one. There's a movie called Remote. Okay? It's about a kid with remote control stuff, and I love remote control stuff. Go look up that movie. I'm not going to get into the plot, but it came out in the 90s. It's called Remote. That is one of those movies that is very return-worthy, but I like it. So we have a leans rewatch from the 2005 version of Fantastic Four, and we have a return-worthy from the 2015 version of Fantastic Four. As this comes out, as this episode comes out, we will be coming off of the opening weekend of the new Fantastic Four, which is kind of why I wanted to hit both of these. I'm hoping that the new one is really great. I think that, like I said, neither of these are known as great films or really things anybody really talks about. They just kind of are things that happened, while the 2005 version is a much better film. It's a very different film, but a much better film than the 2015 version. They're both still just kind of like, you know, not in any way, shape, form, or fashion are they in that certified rewatchable club. And, you know, I'm okay with that. Some of these episodes are going to fall this way, and I definitely want to make sure that I'm not just only doing movies that fall in the certified rewatchable category, because that would get boring. That would mean every single one of these, you kind of know where it's going to go. So this is the first time that we've had movies fall outside of the 40 to 50 certified rewatchable on the verdict scale, and it will not be the last. But I don't know that I can do two bad ones in a row. So while I'm going to try to next week cover the new Fantastic Four and see how it falls, I'm hoping that I don't have to have it fall outside of certified rewatchable. Please, Marvel, please give me something worth watching again and again, because that's what we want out of movies. All that down, we are finished today. Thank you for tuning in to Rewatch or Return. Go do all the subscribing and the following and all that stuff that helps out with the algorithms and has this show to more people and allows you to see what's going on. If you want to subscribe to social media, I have a Rewatch or Return Instagram account where I kind of post things there, some little clips and things and updates. Other than that, that is the end of this episode, and we will see you next week.